The stage is set. Tuesday night, the first of three presidential debates. President Trump and Vice President Joe Biden will come face to face, social distancing, of course. 6 topics have been selected by moderator Chris Wallace. They include the candidates' records, the Supreme Court, COVID-19, the economy, race and violence in American cities, and the integrity of this year's election. Tuesday night's debate will begin at 6 and run for 90 minutes. So it's crunch time for Biden and Trump. Debates, polls, and social media will all play a role. Joining me now is President Obama's former campaign communication advisor, author of Patriots of Two Nations, Why Trump Was Inevitable and What Happens Next. Also, media expert Spencer Critchley is here. Welcome to Sunday Morning Matters. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Good to be here. Thank you.
I want to start with Tuesday night. It's the first debate. So from you as a media expert, who do you think will be more prepared for it? That's one. And two, both Trump and Biden have many out loud political gaffes. Will this be informative or more of a circus? What do you think?
I would say in terms of preparation, President Trump famously does not like to prepare. He likes to trust his instincts of the moment. I think that's both a strength and a weakness for him. I think former Vice President Biden will no doubt be very well prepared, including, I hope, prepared for how to deal with Trump's unique debating style. In terms of the gaffes, you know, I don't think gaffe is the right word to use because I don't think what we're talking about is equivalent. The vice president occasionally has slips of the tongue, occasionally says things that sound a little awkward or people even wish he hadn't said, whereas President Trump has a reputation for saying things that are just flagrantly untrue, often wildly untrue or even dangerous, like his suggestion that people use bleach or disinfectant to treat the coronavirus. So I don't think that's comparable, really. I do think people will be paying a lot of attention, unfortunately, because that's the way branding works, and both of them have been branded that way.
Well, I want to move to polls now because we do see Biden up in Florida. That's the big battleground state, and other battleground states. But Trump is closing in if you look at those polls. So really, it could be a toss-up here. Do you think Trump's base will come back, much like 2016? They always call it the silent majority. How much should we read into the polls at this point?
I always caution people not to read too much into any individual poll and not to fall for the mistake that polls predict the future. It's like the stock market. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. But if you look at polls overall, going back months now, they're actually remarkably steady and consistent, showing Vice President Biden with a very strong lead. It's typically between 6 or 7 and 9 or 10 points, and that has held pretty much fast. I know that's what's got the Trump campaign so worried. They're also at a financial disadvantage. They blew a lot of their money early on and didn't seem to have spent it very efficiently, and they've had to actually pull off the air in many battleground state markets even, whereas the Biden campaign has seen an explosion of donations and are now in the unusual position of being way ahead of the Trump campaign financially.
Well, obviously, we'll have the presidential debates, and then we're also going to have a vice presidential debate, and candidate Kamala Harris, as you know, she didn't even make noise in the Iowa caucus. So is she a game changer in the battleground states for Biden, or is she actually a game changer for President Trump?
President Trump has been trying to throw anything that'll stick at the Biden campaign, including Kamala Harris, as supposedly a liability. I think she's only a strength. In addition to just being eminently qualified for the position, which she really is and would be under any circumstances, no matter who she is, it's wonderful that she really looks like what this country was always designed to be, which is a place where you're an American citizen, not because of who you are or what kind of person you are, where you came from, but because you support the Constitution and laws and values of the United States. And I just think it's terrific that she mixes ancestry from Africa and Jamaica and from India and is married to a white Jewish man. She, to me, is an expression of what the all-American identity is. So I think for all those reasons, she's nothing but an asset.
Well, with that all being said, election results, well, could they end up in the hands of the Supreme Court? Many people are wondering that. And even this week, President Trump said, Spencer, that he doesn't know if it's going to be a transfer of power. He wouldn't commit to it if that should happen. What do you make of that? And obviously, maybe if this whole thing ends up at the Supreme Court level.
I want to say this very clearly because I know people hearing my background will assume, oh, well, he's a Democratic partisan. This is what he would say. I want to make sure people understand I have many good friends who are Republicans, including friends involved with the Lincoln Project, which opposes President Trump on constitutional grounds, not partisan grounds. This is extremely serious. If a Democrat said this, I would be rising up against it, just as I'm against it with President Trump. The peaceful transfer of power is absolutely fundamental to a democracy. If we do not guarantee the peaceful transfer of power, we don't have a democracy. The president, in saying those words, is attacking the essence of democracy. I think he's done many other things to weaken democracy. This is one of the most serious attacks on democracy he has ever committed. And I think we must all resist it, no matter which party we belong to or if we belong to no party.
All right, and finally, I want to add this, as you are a media expert, social media, much of that had decided in the 2016. Is this year's election and social media going to play a big part? Are you suspecting any interference from Russia or maybe even China this time around?
Well, I'm positive there's interference, as is our intelligence community. There's been interference going on since before the election in 2016. This is another extremely serious matter that has nothing to do with partisan identity. Social media can be a tremendous force for good, but as we have seen, it can be also tremendously destructive, especially through the viral transmission of hateful and false stories. Russia is actively engaged in attacking our election right now. The president should be defending us against that. It's unforgivable, in my view, that he is not. He's always claimed this is a hoax. The entire intelligence community says that is not true. It is happening now, and it is a very serious threat.
Spencer Critchley, hey, we appreciate your time. A lot of good stuff there, and we'll be looking forward to reading your book as well, as I will have that in my hands very, very soon. Appreciate the time.
My pleasure. Thank you, Alexander.